Hello and a warm welcome to another episode. My guest today is Jonathan Gregory, former head of partnerships at Userlane, co-CEO and co-founder of the Sound Animal, and former head of commercial partnerships at Moss. Together, we dived into key components of a powerful positioning. We explored ideal customer profiles, jobs to be done, and a lot more. Welcome, Jonathan.
Welcome to Jonathan. I'm super blessed with that vast variety of experience to welcome you today in my episode, Jonathan.
Thanks so much, Björn. Excited to be here.
So when we decided on what kind of topic is key, we were pretty fast aligned on let's dive into ICP and value proposition. And I'm just curious, why is it such a popular topic, even for companies which have exceeded 2 million, 3 million in revenue?
You know, Björn, I'm actually pretty surprised that you're saying that it's a popular topic, because whenever I work with a company, I realize that a lot of the times people haven't really done the work and haven't, thought about what really drives their customers and their ideal profiles that they're targeting to a deeper level. A lot of times people say, yeah, we understand the customer, we've built a solution, but really sitting down and going through the process and having a granular understanding of what drives your customer. Most of the time, people don't do that until they're like Series B, right? So I think talking about popularity is maybe the wrong way to phrase it. I think it's a very important point. Yeah, maybe in our bubble, yeah, but it's a super important point, because it basically defines everything that we do with the customer after our initial contact, and even driving the topic of how we generate awareness. Yeah, so that's, I think, why it is such an important topic.
All right. Yeah, I'm totally with you, and it's great to have a kind of a cross check about popularity. So let's dive into it. And for me, ICP are the ideal customer profile, of course, and some even kind of add to it the key personas and the key roles in buying center. For me, ideal customer profile is focusing on the criteria on the company level. Mm-hmm. Is it the same perspective you have, or are you mixing company and contact?
I am mixing both. I think if you're thinking about like an outbound process, for example, it makes more sense to kind of think about the company level perspective. What kind of information can you get from outside and identify who you should approach? But if you're going a level deeper and thinking about what my messaging should be and how I can lead our customers through the buying process, then it really becomes about the individual personas that you are targeting, and then you have to go to that level.
So let's have the end in mind. Because we were talking about, it's not just awareness and demand generation, but it also has implications on the sales funnel, but also when it comes to expansion. So thinking about segmentation, let's dig a little bit deeper about best practice on the company level, because at the very end, as I see it, and I know that you are also a huge fan of revenue strategy and operations. So what is kind of best practice when it comes to what are the essential criteria to define on the company level?
So there's some basic things like, the size of the company, the geography that you're targeting, the kind of company. Is it like a vertical theme that you're targeting? Is it a horizontal theme? So examples would be, are you selling to schools or are you selling to manufacturing companies, right? A horizontal theme would be more like, anyone who is, an enterprise company and needs collaboration software, right? So there's differences like that. And then I think the more granular you can get, the more you're gonna, the better you can target your outbound efforts. Yeah. In terms of the company level ICP, I think a lot of times you do need to take at least the role that you're targeting into the consideration. So saying, hey, I want to speak to the marketing leader. Yeah? Otherwise, you don't know who you're targeting within that company. But I think those are the main ones. And then, of course, you can add, factors that are a little bit less tangible. So for example, like, is it a modern brand? Is it a very conservative company? Is it, someone who is more on the innovator front, or someone who is more, counting on proven methods? So these kinds of softer factors you can take into account as well.
Let's move on to personas, because you were mentioning at least I need one role, and then when it comes to messaging, and for me there are at least two components of it. One thing is, if we deal with humans, and we do, then of course you have these emotional triggers, what is helping them on a personal level, but also what is helping them in a professional level. So how do you make it digestible? How do you structure these powerful messaging, which is then a make or break in accelerating the entire revenue organization?
Well, that's a big question. There's a couple of steps, more than a couple, I would say. But I would begin by really defining, okay, like, who do you think you're solving a problem for? And then what are those problems? And that means that you need to go to a level of understanding what their day-to-day jobs are. So there's a methodology called jobs to be done, which I like. I think it's a more tangible way of defining a persona than what a lot of companies do, is to say, hey, I have like the busy bee manager, she's like 42 years old and all that stuff. That's for me not the level of persona that I'm looking for. It's more like, what are the tasks and the goals that this role has to achieve, and what are the issues and challenges that they have on the way to doing that. And then you can go in and say, okay, what are the pains that they're experiencing in their daily lives, and drill down on that. Yeah. So that's the first part.
So I'm a huge fan of jobs to be done, and then map the pain, or attach the current pain, then match or map what is the change through the new product or service, and then also quantify the impact.
Right, absolutely. And I think, like, even before you can go to the topic of quantifying it, I think you have to kind of realize, is the pain actually, large, and is it painful, or is it more like a maybe thing? I like I worked with Pete Crosby at Moss, and Pete has a framework where he created the hierarchy of pain, and that's basically just saying, hey, from a 0 to a 10, 0 being there's no pain, and 10 being my company will die if I don't act right. Where on that scale is that pain, right? And then you can see how critical that is for a person or for a company to be solved. And obviously, if you address a higher pain, then your solution is going to have a higher impact, right? So to be able to get to the point of impact, I think the first step is you have to identify how big the issue is that you're solving. And I think I like to think about it in two ways. First is the company level pain, and the second is the individual person's level pain. Yeah? So the company might have a big problem in like not being able to forecast over the whole company, but the individual person might not be affected by this, right? So I think those are two separate ways of looking at pain, and you should look at both.
Yeah. And what pops into my mind is when we look at at least we talk about mid-size or even enterprise companies, and we're looking at the entire buying center, then if you're talking to kind of a C-level and or kind of top management, then you have this bigger perspective, which is more relevant. And there you have the personal interest and the company interest more aligned or closer together. Whereas when you talk to user, then you might have a increasing gap between these two perspectives.
Yeah,
is absolutely.
That right? Like top, above the line, below the line, that concept. I like it, especially for outbound. So I think that's a great way of thinking about it in a different way as well.
And I'm one of my favorites, and I learned it from Patrick Trimpe. Hello to Zurich. And he's always asking, okay, Now we have talked so much about the functional benefits. So what's personally in for you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's yeah, at the very end we have all, whether hid consciously or subconsciously, we have a personal interest or not in getting a new product, a new service in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like when it comes to quantifying, then I think you can also go one level deeper, because a lot of times when we talk about the pain, we stay quite on the shallow end of the of the ocean, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go deeper and kind of look at, what are the implications of that pain and what's the risk that they're facing, then you can go one level deeper and you can say, how big is that actually? Like, if we don't act, what might happen? Yeah. And then figure out, the propensity of it, see, okay, how big the impact would be, how likely it is that impact would occur, and then how immediate it is, basically. So is it something that might happen in 3 years, or is it something that's going to happen tomorrow? Because then you better act.
The other thing which kind of also attaching and supporting this deep level of qualification is, you talked about that you're a Spiced fan. Is it kind of for every company you have been to and all the clients? What's your perspective on a really rigid qualifications process along the journey?
Yes, I have an issue with the wording qualification. Whenever I hear that, I feel people are trying to weed out whether or not a customer makes sense for them, and I think it, especially for, like, if you have that focus on qualification, I think you go in the conversation with a different mindset than if you say it's a discovery, right? So I would say I would call it discovery or exploration, and then understand whether or not we can actually help that person achieve what they're looking for. So that's just an aside. And then when we go in, I think, like, one of the first sales books that I read was Spin Selling by, I think, Neil Rackham. And it was a formative experience for me, because it was the first time where I understood that, I differentiating between pain and problem and impact, and that there are different questions that you need to ask to kind of ascertain what that means for the customer, for the person that you're talking to. And whether you use Spiced or Spin or Medic, all these different methodologies that you can use, it basically comes down to understanding the problems and the pains that people have and the impact that has. So what is the implication of that pain in your daily life? How does that affect you? And how costly can that be? Yeah. Whether or not it is missing out on opportunities, or it is, generally like losing money or running into issues. Yeah. So I think just having that framework in mind and saying, okay, if I do discovery and exploration with a customer, I kind of try to understand how big of an issue these things are, so that I can see where I can add value. And then if I can add value, where I have to focus the continuing conversations and the work that I'm doing with them. Yeah. I mean, I come from a consulting background. I was a consultant for 7 years. And so I think that kind of mindset of really understanding the client, and then, working out the issues and the problem, and then creating solutions based on that is ingrained in how I think. Yeah. And I think that's becoming increasingly important for salespeople to act in a way of a consultative manner or capacity, to then be able to say, okay, well, here's I understood you, and I can build on that, and then I can challenge you and kind of like lead you to a point where you couldn't have gotten without me. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like the perspective on discovery. I'm just thinking out loud, because the only thing in that context why I like the qualification is for disqualification. So if we find out that we are not a good fit, then it's and this is, I think, stuff which is getting more and more popular, I would say. But I think it's a super important tool to say at some stage, we are not a good fit for either because the product is not serving what you're really looking for, and or it's not the right time, or any other circumstances, but we are conscious about investing any further resources into it, or to rephrase it, especially when it comes to managing teams, to give the confidence to stop here and then.
Absolutely. And I think a great question to get to that is sometimes I ask, potential clients or people that I talk to that want to get my advice, then I ask them, hey, everything is going so well. Everything you're telling me sounds fantastic. Why are we speaking? And like, where is there anything that's going wrong? Like, it sounds fantastic. So, and then, sometimes they realize, maybe that's just what I told you all the good stuff, but I haven't told you the bad stuff, right? So, and then sometimes they open up and say, okay, well, yeah, actually there's this and this and this, and we can actually work on that. And sometimes it's, actually you're right. I just needed that, to have someone else tell me that actually everything is going well, right? So these two opportunities or these two paths exist, but I can tell you, like 90% of the time, whenever I ask that question, people go to the stuff that then they realize is not going well, and then we have a conversation that gets real.
Yeah, nice. Talking about real, and then I'm intrigued on your perspective. So, still, at least in my little bubble, some people think that the kind of sales process or demand process is kind of linear. So when we talk about ICP and really digging deep into our customers, then of course it's talking about SaaS modeling in particular. It's talking about the impact we are not just claiming to bring, but also that to make the customer feel this value add. So my question to you is, is there any kind of best practice where you have not just this linear optimization, but it's more a circular process in terms of all the learnings or all the insights we get after the initial sales are kind of circled back into continuously shaping ICP segmentation, basically?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great way of looking at it as a circle, because it's a continuous thing to do that. I think I read, I don't know, maybe it was Patrick from Unique as well, but before someone posted this, I always did my sales playbooks on like Word or like Google Docs, right? And then at some point I realized, this is a living document. This is not something that one person creates and then everyone kind of follows it till we all are like into all eternity. It's something that is a living and breathing thing where everyone should be able to contribute, and it needs to iterate and it needs to evolve over time. And so now, I do my sales playbooks for customers. I do them in Notion or like in a collaborative tool. And a lot of times I let, the people that are actually working on the ground and the sellers, create parts of that playbook. And I tell them, this is something that we need. How about you have a crack at it and see what you come up with, and then we can talk about it in the group, right? And so one thing that I really liked that we did at Moss was when it came, for example, around like competitive positioning, we had like one person who has had a lot of experience pitching against a certain competitor, kind of bring that knowledge back to the group and have like a lunch and learn. And then we had like every week, one competitor would be discussed by one seller, and they would share their experiences and update that part of the playbook. So, and I think you can use that process also around like the positioning and the pain, and say, hey, let's have a regular understanding in a meeting to say, hey, has anything changed? Are we targeting, like, do we have to target a new group of people? If we are targeting a new group of people, what are their pains specifically, right? So, for example, at Moss, at one point, we changed ICP a little bit, and we targeted a new group of people, but we haven't really we hadn't done the work until that point of time to really understand their pain. So at least as soon as you switch like persona or like a vertical or horizontal theme that you're addressing, that's the latest point in time actually where I think you should run through that exercise again. But that being said, I think a lot of times, like to really understand customers on a deeper level, you need to kind of set dedicated time aside for that. It's not something that you can just do on the fly, because it does need some form of interaction. It does need some form of deeper thought. So I feel like if you have it, once a quarter or every 6 months or maybe every year, that's probably enough if you have a good basis. Yeah. And then you can take it from there.
It's a great closing remark. It was so short while, but let me wrap it up and please add any kind of whether popular or not. I think we both agree that ICP on the company level and on the key roles and personas is fundamental work, and you can't go deep enough. So it's really and this is where it's crunch time, I would say. This is where the extra learning and the competitive advantage will be created in really understanding, digging into the pains and challenges. And I really like what you said, that on a very practical advice, do it kind of accessible with Notions, and then it's a living document. So with Patrick, we discussed that you can bring it up continuously into the training sessions, that you also have these alignment meetings with insights from marketing, but also customer success. So there is continuous work to really get better together. Is there anything I'm missing within my wrap up?
Great summary, Björn. I would add something that many people don't think about when it comes to ICP and the pain and understanding the customer work comes. So it's about, like, the reason why we do all this work is also to tailor our messaging. And I think that's the next step. It's kind of like to understand what is the value that we are delivering against that pain. Where can we really solve that pain, and how do we solve it? How critical of a problem is it that we're solving? How unique are we in solving that? And then understanding, if you chart it like on a 4x4 matrix and saying, hey, are we like uniqueness and rareness on the one axis, and then like criticality on the other axis, and then understand, okay, do we get anything in the upper or right quadrant of we are unique and this is a critical topic to solve? That's where you should double down on your messaging, right? And this is where you have a competitive advantage, maybe even a monopoly in that topic. And if you can phrase something in a way that addresses that, and maybe also position your messaging around that, then you have a home run that you can take basically to the bank, right? And getting there, I think, is the ultimate culmination of all that work, and that takes an additional process to run through, but I think it's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, what an end! So thanks so much. This was definitely a huge add-on. So Jonathan, thanks so much. This was not just insightful, it was super valuable. So thanks again for your time. I will link your profile for the ones who have been which are interested about more about your work and what you're doing. So have a wonderful day, and thanks again.
Thanks so much, Björn.
Bye.